Welcome back. We're going to be talking about today that new 18 liter that has been all the craze from John Deere recently. So if you've been under a rock or not involved with the ag world right now, Deere just recently came out with an 18 liter engine that is a pretty big deal. So the biggest deal behind it is huge horsepower, and it's also toting no def, which is huge from an emissions standpoint. Like, unreal what we can accomplish. We get above 750 horsepower. There's a ton less engines produced above that threshold, so the emission standards are different. They still require emissions, but the standards are just different. So because the standards are different, we don't have to run def on this new 18 liter, which, hey, fine, dandy, great, but what's this engine going to be like? Let me tell you a secret. This 18 liter is not new. We've actually had an 18 liter in the 9700, 9600, and 9500 series choppers for the last 2 years. So we've actually had them on the ground. We've run these engines, and I can attest that they are very, very nice platforms. So let's take a look at an 18 liter. So under the hood of this 2023, there is the big bad boy, 18 liter. So it's a new engine from Deere. They came out with it in limited production 3 years ago, excuse me. And then 2 years ago, they made it available in the 9500 and the 9600 series chopper platforms, and last year they made it available in the 9700. So while they are in these machines, they have not necessarily been pushing out the horsepower that they have been in the new 9RXs. So this platform has actually developed significantly over the last 2-3 years and has become a really impressive unit for us to run. So with that being said, on our 9700, which is our high-end 18 liter chopper, these ones are pushing right around 800, like 806 is what the horsepower is running in these rigs. So like I said, not as much as the big 9R. The big 9R with max power is pushing like 910 horse. So these aren't quite tuned to that specification, but they still are very impressive units. Now, in this particular model, I'm not sure about the 9RXs yet, but it is a 24 volt system that runs the engine. So we have a 24 volt alternator and a 12 volt alternator, because the engines in these guys, whether it's a LeBaire engine in the big 9000 series or these 18 liters in the small 9000 series, they've always been 24 volt operating system for the engine components, for the modules and everything associated with the engine, and then everything else in the cab, lighting, all that stuff, that is still back here, and that's still a 12 volt system. So right there's a prime example. So 24 volt and 12 volt system. Well, how do you know if a tractor is 24 volt system? Well, A, your sticker is going to tell you, but B, in John Deere equipment, if you see orange, that's a 24 volt system. So I can't speak for the new 9RXs, but I'm assuming if they're working off the same platform, they will also be 24 volts to operate the engines. So we're talking about emissions. So there's our big chrome stack coming out of there into a gigantic muffler, back into the turbochargers, and that's it. There's nothing else back here for your emissions. So we're still running an EGR system in order to handle the emission standards that this engine has to meet, but the no def thing has been really big in our chopper industry for the last 2 years since this motor has come out, and we are over ecstatic to see this finally jump into another platform, being the 9RXs. So As far as this machine being out, the company I work for, Tractor Central, we've got a couple of these units out. We've demoed these units. Overall, customers are very happy with it. From a chopper perspective, they say that these are quieter engines than the LeBairs. It's one of the better engines that I've seen come across. Time will definitely tell, but it's putting out a ton of horsepower. So enough of me talking. Let me get a key out of my pocket here and let's fire this thing up and take a listen to it. No def there, just a fuel cap. You know where else you don't see def? Right there, no def, fuel only. Let's fire it up. All right, booted up. So 800 RPMs are what these things run at idle. When these things are wound up, notice the RPM on this. So 1800 is all these things run at. Very low RPM range that these things run in, and I'll explain to you why. So RPMs are normally here on these 18-liter engines. We've got this massive power bar in the choppers, and when we run these things 1800 RPM, that is max engine RPM these things run. Such a big displacement, huge cylinders in this thing, they don't need a lot of RPM to produce the power. The interesting thing is when you start lugging these engines, they absolutely love it. So here you've got the dark green bar. That is our power bar in a chopper. And these things are most efficient. You get the most amount of power when you lug these things down to 1400 RPMs. Now, because you have such a big displacement, when you lug these motors down to a point, the RPMs drop, but your torque significantly increases as you're running that motor down. So with that being said, you can get super high torque on these motors the more you lug it. So the harder you work these things, the happier they are, which sounds crazy in some ways, but we've proven that in this platform already. You take this platform and you put it in that 9RX, the big 9RX is pushing over 3,100 foot-pounds of torque when you get it down around that 1400 RPM range. That's because of the displacement that's in this, the technology that they've put into this machine. It just goes, and that's the biggest thing that you can get out of this is even when you start to work these things down, they're going to work even harder for you. Really, with the choppers, you get these things below 1200 RPMs, they're going to fall flat on their face. So don't think you have torque all the way down to 800 RPMs where these things idle. Won't work like that. Again, proven it in this exact machine we're sitting in. You go below 1200 RPMs, it'll keep taking more, but the torque curve significantly drops after that 1300 down to 1200 RPMs. And then for a chopper, it falls flat on its face. You've got a plugged feed rolls, plugged cutter head, plugged spout. Not a good day. But otherwise, as far as this 18-liter goes, key takeaways I want you guys to understand on this. It's a proven system. I mean, we put it on choppers. Choppers are one of the hardest worked machines in the world because we run them hard all day long at maximum engine load so we can get maximum throughput and run them hard, put up the saddle blanket wet when we're done with it, right? So these engines have taken the abuse. Number two, easy to maintain with no def. That's a really big industry game changer. Again, with these motors, they burn clean. They do a great job at being efficient. All in all, that's a quick overlook of these 18 liters. We've got them tried and true in the field, tested. We've been very happy with them. I think people who end up with these new 9RXs are going to be very happy with them too. And I'm hoping that we can build off this platform and get some more high horsepower stuff out there. If we can put it in a chopper, if we can put it in a 9RX, we might be able to put it in more. You never know what Mother Deere's thinking, but these are really, really freight train style engines that are just never quit. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on the next one.